My name is Bella, and I'm 32 years old. Last Christmas, I thought everything would finally change. I had two pieces of news to share: my long-awaited promotion at work and my engagement. I pictured the moment over and over in my head. Maybe this time I thought my mother would smile, clap her hands, even hug me the way she hugged my siblings whenever they announced their latest victories. The house looked exactly as it always did in December. White lights strung around the tree, the old angel topper, the smell of cinnamon rolls drifting from the kitchen, and Bing Crosby crooning from the dusty stereo in the corner. I stepped inside with carefully wrapped presents, and a heart beating so hard I thought it might burst. My dad hugged me warmly. "There's my marketing genius," he said. "Can't wait to hear your big news." But then she appeared, my mother in her red sweater, the one I had bought her the year before. Her eyes swept over me once, slow and critical. "Bella, what on earth are you wearing? That dress washes you out. And your hair? Did you even try?" I forced a smile. "Merry Christmas to you too, Mom." But the knot in my stomach tightened instantly, because deep down, I knew where this night was headed. Minnie Hook. What she said at dinner that evening would shatter everything between us and free me forever. Growing up, I was always the middle child, and in my family, being in the middle meant invisible. Michael, my older brother, was the golden boy, the achiever. Karen, the youngest, was the princess who got away with everything. Michael became a doctor, and my mom, Patricia, never let anyone forget how brilliant her son was. Karen threw tantrums, broke rules, yet she was excused, while I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. If Michael brought home a B, he was praised. If I brought home straight A's, it was barely noticed. When Karen smashed things, she was expressive. When I raised my voice, I was difficult. I saved paychecks from part-time jobs to buy mom gifts, while Michael and Karen grabbed last-minute things from the mall. Somehow, their gifts always earned the biggest smiles and hugs. Mine earned polite nods before the spotlight shifted away. I thought college would change things. I chose marketing because I loved its creativity and strategy. But when I told my family, Mom's face collapsed. "Marketing isn't a real career, Bella," she sighed. "That's just pretty pictures. Why not something serious? Like Michael's medicine or Karen's law? Something that matters." Those words stung, but I pushed forward anyway. Graduated with honors, landed my first marketing job downtown. Every campaign I led, every client I landed, I'd call home hoping for pride in her voice. But the answer was always the same. "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Michael got published? Karen just won another big case. She's really making a name." No matter what I did, it was never enough. And year after year, the message sank deeper. I was the lesser child, the one they merely endured. Minnie Hook. But what they didn't see, what they refused to see, was that their invisible daughter was quietly building strength. Through my 20s, I worked harder than anyone imagined. Not just at my marketing job, but everywhere else too. I was the one who showed up when they called, the one who filled in the gaps no one else noticed. When Dad had surgery, I drove him to every appointment. I sat in waiting rooms for hours, holding Mom's hand, while Michael was too busy and Karen couldn't miss court. But later, I was scolded for not giving them more updates. When my parents moved into their new house, I spent my vacation painting walls, unpacking boxes, sneezing from dust while my siblings sent excuses. Yet Mom still bragged about how busy they were. I even dog-sat their German Shepherd every holiday trip, though I'm allergic and spent weekends swallowing antihistamines. It never mattered. My help was invisible, expected, forgotten. And still I kept giving, thinking maybe someday it would count. I learned to anticipate their emergencies before they happened. When bills piled up, I dipped into my savings quietly. When Michael's student loan defaulted, I sent the payment. When Karen's bar exam fees loomed, I covered the balance. Each time, Mom swore it was temporary, just until they recovered. Each time I believed her, because I wanted to believe that being useful might finally make me worthy of her pride. So I carried the burden alone, month after month, year after year. No one at the table ever suspected. They saw me as comfortable, with my small apartment, never realizing it stayed small because my money disappeared, poured into their crises while my own dreams sat on hold. I told myself it was love, that this was family. But deep down, I knew I was buying something. Buying my place at the table. Buying the hope that one day, I'd be seen the way they were. It was exhausting and isolating. And slowly, it built a pressure inside me that had no release. I smiled at holidays, swallowed barbed comments, then went home alone, counting down to the next request. And still, I told myself to wait a little longer, because maybe, just maybe if I held on, Christmas would be different. My news would matter. This time she would look at me with pride. Minnie Hook. But what my mother chose to say that night wasn't pride. It was a sentence that cut me to pieces. Dinner began like every Christmas before it. China plates, polished silver, my grandmother at the head, candles flickering against the same wallpaper I'd stared at since childhood, always waiting for my turn to belong. Conversations swirled around the table effortlessly. Michael's practice was expanding. Karen had another promotion. My cousin Janet's wedding plans filled the air. I smiled, laughed when prompted, and kept touching my purse. Inside was the ring box, velvet and small. My heart pounded each time my hand brushed against it. This was the moment I'd rehearsed 100 times. The moment I prayed might finally change everything. When the lull came, Grandma turned toward me. "Bella, are you still at that marketing place downtown?" "Yes," I said, "and actually I have news." I opened the box, the diamond catching the candlelight. David proposed. We're engaged. The words filled the room. For a breath, silence. Dad smiled. Grandma squeezed my hand. Then came muted congratulations, half-hearted clinking of glasses. Michael checked his phone. Karen adjusted her sleeve. And my mother? Blank. Unimpressed. Almost bored. "October?" she asked sharply when I explained the timing. 2 months ago and you're just telling us now? Her laugh was tight, cutting. Typical Bella, always secretive, always keeping things to herself. No wonder we never know. What's going on in your life? I tried to steady my breath. "That's not true, Mom. I call every week." I wanted this to be special. Michael asked again what David did, as if he'd forgotten. "He's a high school English teacher," I answered proudly. "A teacher?" my mother repeated, voice dripping with disdain. "Well, I suppose that's stable. Not impressive, but stable." Heat burned in my chest. I pushed back gently. "He's kind, supportive. He makes me feel seen." But then she turned fully toward me, her voice rising. "You're 32, Bella. Still renting a tiny apartment. You've never accomplished anything significant in your career. And now you're marrying a school teacher? Let's be realistic. You're the most useless child this family has." The room froze. Forks clattered against china. Even Karen's smirk vanished, replaced by stunned silence. My father shook his head in disbelief. I sat there, pulse roaring, vision blurring. 32 years of biting my tongue, 32 years of smiling through humiliation. And with one sentence, she shattered it all, and something inside me snapped free. Minnie Hook. Because what I said next didn't just shock her. It exposed the truth my family had ignored for years. For a moment, silence gripped every corner of the room. Then slowly I pushed back my chair and stood. My hands trembled, but my voice came out steady. "Stop calling me useless, Mom, especially when you owe me." Her face froze. Around the table, relatives leaned closer. "What are you talking about?" she demanded sharply. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. "You want proof? Here it is. For 2 years I've sent you $1,500 monthly, covering your car payments while you called me a failure. I paid Dad's hospital bills. I covered Karen's bar fees. And every time you told me not to tell." Gasps broke around the table like shattering glass. Even Michael's phone slipped from his hand. "Guess who paid off his student loans last Christmas?" Michael's jaw dropped. "Bella, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. Mom said it would embarrass you." She called it my contribution, while telling everyone I was worthless. I scrolled through my banking app, voice rising with each line. September 15th, October 3rd, November 7th. All me. My Aunt Susan's mouth fell open. Grandma's eyes narrowed. Even Dad turned toward Mom, voice shaking with anger. "Patricia, is this true?" he demanded. She stammered weakly. But the denial never made it past her lips. I let out a bitter laugh. "Not what it looks like. It looks like I've been paying your bills for years, living paycheck to paycheck while you drove nice cars, and still found the nerve to call me useless." Karen whispered, "Wait, you paid for my exam?" "Yes," I snapped, and I wasn't allowed to say, because Mom needed her story intact. Me the failure, you two the shining stars. Convenient, wasn't it? I turned to my mother, pale and speechless. "You ask what kind of man would marry me. The kind who knows I've held this family together. The kind who sees my worth, even when you never did." The silence afterward was heavier than any insult. Finally, I shoved my phone back into my purse. "Well, congratulations, Mom. You proved your point tonight." Because starting now, the Bank of Bella is closed. No more loans, no more bailouts. I'm done. The table erupted. Gasps, whispers, chairs scraping violently. Dad's face burned with fury, Grandma's with disappointment. And for the first time in 32 years, my mother had absolutely nothing left to say. Minnie Hook. But leaving that table wasn't the end. It was the first step into freedom I never imagined. Walking out of that dining room, I felt lighter. For the first time in my life, the silence was mine. No one to compare me, no one to dismiss me, no one demanding more while calling me less. The calls started before I even reached my car. Texts from my mother, voicemails from relatives, half apologies, half accusations. For once, I let them ring. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not anymore. David found me that night, still in my dress, sitting on the couch, phone buzzing nonstop. "I can't believe I said all of that," I whispered. "I can," he replied softly. "You finally told the truth." Over the next weeks, the storm raged and faded. Dad called first, apologizing, admitting he'd failed to defend me. Michael offered to pay me back, ashamed of his silence. Even Karen's sharpness softened when she realized my sacrifices. But the biggest change wasn't them. It was me. I stopped picking up every call. I stopped apologizing. I stopped carrying guilt for a family who mistook my love for weakness, my generosity for obligation. For the first time, I saved money for myself. I planned a wedding with David, free from her shadow. I started dreaming again, not about approval, but about a future built on respect and choice. And slowly, I realized something I'd waited decades to feel. I was enough. Not because my mother said so, not because my siblings finally saw me, but because I knew it myself. The little girl desperate to earn love was gone. The woman standing now had drawn her line. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be treated as less than you are. Have you ever had to set boundaries? With family? Wherever you're watching from, morning coffee or late night quiet, I'd like to hear your story in the comments. And if this one stayed with you, subscribe to join a community that believes strength isn't silence, it's knowing when to speak. And remember, you are worth more than their approval.